Hello and welcome to Crediversio's Q&A Live Wednesday for July 14th, 2023. Thank you for joining me today. I'm your host, David Michalek. I'm a certified FICO Pro credit expert with now well over 10 years of experience. And in that time, I've helped tens of thousands of people create disputes, work on their own credit, recover from bad credit. And now with Crediversio for well over 3 years now. And in that time, a little over 330,000 accounts created, and I can't even tell you how many millions of disputes that we've done, but it's a lot. And I'm here to help you to understand the credit process, credit repair. It's just going to be us today. John Olsheimer, formerly of FICO and Equifax, will be back with us probably next Wednesday. So the nice thing about that is we have full freedom to talk about credit repair. You know, I kind of restrict the conversation a little bit when John's with us because he's mostly a credit expert guy, not so much the repair strategy and so forth. So we usually shelve those questions for in the comments when I come back to them a little bit later on. But I'm all yours today. I'm here to answer your questions. And as always, I have a theme that I like to work on for the lives. And today's theme is what I've learned from doing 10,000 plus repairs for clients over the decade that I've been in this business, millions upon millions of disputes. And one of the things I'm going to impart on you today is how uncomplicated the dispute process, at least the letter writing process, actually is. This is an area where there's a lot of myth, a lot of bad ideas, a lot of things that people do that really undermine their success and make things a lot more difficult for themselves, as opposed to just going forward and putting forth the best dispute they possibly can and trying to clean up as much of the things on their credit report as possible. And while we're getting started, got a little more than a dozen people on. It's you can see some more people jumping on right now, so we should have a pretty good turnout today. And so I'm here for you. This is truly a Q&A session. Ask me anything that you like. That's what I'm here to do. And do take a second to introduce yourself. Just want to make sure everybody can hear me. I had a microphone setup change earlier today. Just want to make sure that I'm coming across loud and clear. Stan, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you for joining me today. And I know we've got well over a dozen now. So everybody take a second. Don't be shy. Say hello. Let me know where you're from. If you're new to Crediversio, let me know. That's great. Typically, we like to send out invitations to people who just recently created a Crediversio account. Let them know that every Wednesday, for the most part, I mean, there are exceptions. I wasn't here last week. Wednesday, I was on vacation, visiting my brother out in Colorado. But that's an exception. I'm usually here every Wednesday, either by myself or with my good friend John Olsheimer, and we love to do Q&A. So I'm going to get started here. We typically take about anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes or so to get started. I mean, to cover the subject that we're going to cover today. Usually, I get started with my subject. I get into it a little bit, and before I can even finish, we spend all of our time answering questions, and that's really the way that I prefer it. All right, David, welcome. Austin, Texas. Excellent. Orlando, my credit report just updated from Crediversio website. My first round, do I have to wait the full 40 days before the system lets me start round 2? Yeah. Here's why you want to do that. Well, if your credit report updated from Crediversio, then it does that every 40 days. So you should be, that means if it updated after 40 days, that means that you should be ready for your round 2, unless you manually brought in a credit report early, because you are eligible for a new credit report through Smart Credit and Identity IQ every 30 days. But one of the things that we impart on everybody is please don't bring in a new credit report sooner than the 40 days. The reason for that is you have to take in consideration a couple of things. One is, this might not be you, but a lot of people don't create their dispute letters the same day they create their Crediversio account. They'll create it, like, say, on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and then go, you know what, this is great. I'm gonna wait for the weekend to do my letters. Then they print up their letters on Saturday or Sunday, drop them in the mail. Next thing you know, it's Monday. And then it takes a few days for those letters to get to the bureaus and get processed. So now we're talking about a week. And then the bureaus get 30 days. Now, they probably won't take 30 days. Most of the time, they're responding to disputes within, I mean, if it's fast, maybe 10 days. But even if you hear back early, The problem, well, it's a potential problem. It's a rare one, but I just want to prepare people for it, is that even though you may have gotten a response back from the bureaus, it doesn't mean that the creditor cannot change their mind in that same 30-day window. This is the thing that really really plays with people a little bit, is you got one answer from the bureaus because that's the answer they got from the creditor, and then the creditor who's still might take that full 30 days to, if it's an ongoing investigation for them, they might change the data. So you can be told one thing and then 29 days later they might say something different, which means that if you bring in a credit report early, Credit Versio is going to miss that because it brought in the credit report too soon. So listen, I've been down this road before. I came into the credit repair space as a client about 11, almost 12 years ago. So I get it. It's patience is a really, really hard thing. But if you can, I highly recommend waiting that full 40 days and let Credit Versio bring in the credit report automatically, and try not to bring in your credit reports early. Let's see. Stan, question: why would a deleted item return back on your credit report? Is it in the legality of the FRC? Well, it's actually FCRA. I don't know. That's probably just a little typo. Well, a reinsertion is actually pretty rare, Stan. Here, I just had this conversation a few days ago with somebody. When people say that, well, it came back on my credit report, about 90% of the time what they're talking about is a collection. They're talking about a collection that got deleted. Let me give you the scenario that I gave this person I was talking to on the phone. Let's say you have a collection from Cox Cable, big, whoever your cable company is. And let's say this is a real common one too. Let's say they charged you for a cable box you didn't return, or you did return it and they still charge you for it anyway. They sell it off to Midland Funding. So you send a dispute and Midland deletes it from your credit report. Well, later on down the road, maybe a month or two later, Midland passes that along or sells that debt over to LVNV. And now it pops up on your credit report again as a collection on behalf of Cox Cable. It doesn't mean the same account came back. It means that the account was now purchased by another collection company who is now your new creditor, and they are putting that back on your credit report. That's what happens about it when things come back on credit reports. That's what happens 90% of the time. Now, what are the exceptions to that? What if you have, say, some late payments deleted, and then they come back on? Well, all that means is if they deleted them, say, within that first 2 or 3 weeks or so, and then that's what you saw, you got a report, just like I was talking about a second ago. And then they're like, well, wait a minute, we're continuing our investigation within the 30-day timeline, and we see that these late payments are accurate, and they are supposed to be on the credit report. And then you'll see a reinsertion of the data. So those are the two set of circumstances where you'll see things coming back on a credit report. Is that in violation of FCRA? No, that's actually fully within compliance. James, why isn't it taking my late payments off? Well, let's frame this correctly. Anything can be deleted from a credit report if, and this is right out of the Fair Credit Reporting Act, if it's erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. Okay, those are the four things. Those are the four circumstances under which an account can be removed from your credit report. So the question you have to ask yourself is: are your late payments erroneous? Are they outdated? Are they incomplete? That doesn't really apply. Are they verifiable? Now, if they're not, if your late payments are on the up and up, and your creditor has come back and said, "Yeah, James, we have historical documentation that says that you were in fact late on these times. We can see it in our record. We can see it in the payment history." Then it's not going to come off. Now, having said that, if the creditor does not have the ability to verify the information. So, for example, if the creditor, let's say you are late, and this is the fourth one, this is verification. Let's say the creditor really doesn't have the ability to verify the data. One of the things that happens with some data furnishers is they archive data. Doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes they'll archive data, usually with closed accounts like charge-off collections, especially if they've 1099 you, maybe they've sold the debt off. If you dispute something usually it is a little bit more difficult for them to verify. So frankly, in the 10 years plus I've been doing this, millions of disputes, 10,000 plus clients, one of the things that we see most often when things get deleted, a lot of the times it's because of number 4, erroneous, outdated, incomplete, unverifiable. Sometimes data furnishers are just not really up to the challenge of verifying the information. Let's see. Stan, is it true the bureaus use AI to decipher template-generated letters versus handwritten? Something I've been hearing lately? No. 100% no truth to that whatsoever. They do not care. Let me give you a little factoid. And by the way, that would put a really big smile on John Alzheimer's face, because we've had this discussion a couple of times before, or this question's come up before. And as you know, John used to work in dispute resolution for Equifax, and he was there for many, many years. And he did a lot of training in that part of dispute resolution. Bureaus do not care. They really don't. And contrary to what the credit repair mythology is out there, because I've had plenty of guys on this live who worked in dispute resolution at the credit bureau level. And one of the problems with the credit repair space is there's so many people who never bother to ask anybody who worked at a bureau or worked at FICO or worked at VantageScore how things really work. So that's how you get this myth and this nonsense that spins around into the blogosphere, and you'll have people who make very credible looking YouTube videos. And one of the first things you go to is like, well, what are their credentials? Do they come from a bureau? Are they FICO certified? Do they have CDIA certifications? For those of you who don't know, CDIA is the trade association for the credit bureaus and data furnishers. And when they're completely absent of that, the question is, well, where are they getting this information from? And most of the time, it's just they got it from a credit repair guy who got it from a credit repair guy or girl who got it from somebody else. And that's how a lot of these things get spun around and around and around. So, Stan, just to put this question back up again, they do not care about template letters. I'll give you a perfect example. You know where most of the dispute letters that individuals dispute their own stuff, you know where they get those templates from? The FTC website and the CFPB website. These are the governing bodies that oversee the credit bureaus. Imagine a situation where the credit bureaus would ignore templates that are coming from the regulatory agencies that rule over them. It just doesn't happen. Here's what happened. I'll just give you a quick overview of what goes on when a dispute is received by the 3 bureaus or any bureau. So it's fed into what's called an optical character reading machine. They scan it. It turns that dispute into a PDF, by the way. So, okay, sometimes it'll read it, sometimes it'll do some deciphering, but physical eyes are always on the dispute letter. And what they do is they read the dispute. Let's say you've got 10 items that are on that credit report. All that person does is they enter in what you're disputing, and they do an ACDV. This is an automatic consumer credit dispute verification document through eOscar, which goes over to the data furnisher. When I say data furnisher, think creditor. This is anybody who furnishes data to a bureau. So if you've got 10 different disputes for 10 different creditors, that processor at the bureau, probably overseas actually, is sending those 10 different disputes to the 10 different creditors. Do they care how they got it? Zero. They do not care. They don't care if it was template. They don't care if you write it in crayon. John one time, and also Steve Rieger, who used to run the entire dispute division, West Coast dispute division for TransUnion one time, says, like, you could send a dispute in on a cocktail napkin and they probably would respond to it. I don't suggest testing that. I think there was a little bit of humor in that. But the point is that they really don't care. Here's what they do care about. They do care if the dispute letter came from a credit repair company, because those they can ignore. Normally they don't, but they can if they want to. There's a provision in the Fair Credit Reporting Act called Exclusion G. In fact, I think I might even have it on here. Yeah, I do. There it is right there, Exclusion G. It says that, I won't read it, I'll just give you the spirit of it. Essentially what it says is that if a dispute letter is was created by a credit repair company and sent over, that they can always tell. Like if you live in California and your dispute letter came from Salt Lake City, Utah, which is where you find a lot of credit repair companies like Lexington Law and CreditRepair.com and a host of others, they can pretty easily, figure out that you didn't send the dispute letter. So this provision in the FCRA gives them the ability to ignore the letter, but they don't necessarily determine that by the template letter. They determine that by the postmark that's on the letter itself. And does it match your address? Does it match your ID? Anyway, okay, Andre, let's see. Oh, good to see you again. I always know it's you, Andre, because you got that slick-looking Tesla right there in the background. Question today. After the credit bureaus got my letter, they said my proof of address isn't acceptable. Yeah. Do I need to wait 30 days to send a second dispute letter? And does Credit Versio have an option for this? Yes. Andre, so in Quick Start video number 1, and I know this for a fact because I'm the one that made the Quick Start videos, one of the things that I tell everybody to do is to scan your photo ID, so it can be a state issue ID, it could be a passport, and your proof of address. Now, this is a really important part of the proof of address. I'm not sure what part they told you they couldn't accept. 99% of the time, it's the proof of address. So the proof of address has to be from an institution that checked your credit, that did some kind of verification you are who you said you are. So that's going to be a utility bill company: gas, electric, water, trash, sewage, cable, satellite. Those are all acceptable. And make it less than 60 days old. They want to see that your name and address is on this document and it's less than 60 days old. You could probably go 90 days, but I wouldn't go any older than that. A pay stub would work just fine. Let's see, what else would work fine? A tax return would work, not the whole tax return, or a W-2 would work just fine. Nobody needs to see your income or numbers or money or anything. They just need to see that it's got your name and address from an official document. Pay stub, if I didn't already say that. An insurance, car insurance documentation, because they certainly run your credit and do an identity check. So that's what the bureaus want. They just want a proof of address from another source that they know for sure checked your identity. So you can't send like a medical bill or not even a cell phone bill, because you could be anywhere with a cell phone bill. Okay. Let's see. Great stuff. Stan, I'm glad you like it. Keep the questions coming. Okay. Let's see. Orlando, can you explain the difference between the rounds of dispute letters? Yeah, actually, it's very easy. So round 1 is so the way that Credit Versio works is it's an AI system that reads your credit report. It's comparing all accounts across all 3 bureaus, and it can find up to 20 different kinds of mistakes, deviations, violations, any kind of an error. That is a great platform for a dispute. And the more data it has, meaning the more credit reports it has progressively, the better it gets at finding discrepancies along the way. It's one of the things that software can do much better than people. You and I, we don't read data forms particularly well, but computers do. And that's essentially what Credit Versio is. It's a very complex AI system that is able to find issues. Okay, let's see. Let me take a look at something here. I definitely want to answer this question. Okay. All right. So guys, listen. Every now and then we get people who want to pop in and give their 2 cents. There's one expert in this forum, and that's me. And I appreciate people wanting to comment and stuff, but we're going to stick to the subject at hand today. All right, let's see here. So Orlando, going back to your question, round 1 is that intro round, and it is going to read the credit report, make the best assessment, look for errors, and then it's going to guide you through that round 1. Round 2, 40 days later, it's going to, again, bring in your credit report, scan it thoroughly, and see what took place. Was something deleted? Was something repaired? Is there anything new that was added? For the accounts that weren't repaired, what changed? Okay, is there any material change in the data that would make for a better dispute? So that's what Credit Versio is now doing. Really, on that first round, Credit Versio can maybe find, I don't know, 15, 18 different kinds of mistakes, probably closer to 15. But now we got round 2. So now we have a second credit report. So now we got credit report 2 versus credit report 1. And now there's so much more data and there's so much stuff that could have happened with those 2 credit reports. So now round 2 most likely is going to be a follow-up to round 1 saying, hey, I don't agree with the outcome of the dispute. This is assuming they didn't delete anything. Explain to me how you were able to verify this information was verified. Now, they probably aren't going to answer that question, but what it tells them is that you're not going away. Because data furnishers understand that when people do their own credit repair and they don't have the assistance of a professional, or they're not using software like Credit Versio, a lot of times they just fizzle out and quit because they don't know what to say if round 1 isn't very successful. I mean, what do you follow up with unless you really understand what that process is about? So anyway, round 2, again, is a follow-up on round 1. And then when we got round 3 does the same thing. Now it's got more data to look at. It's got that 3rd credit report, the 2nd credit report, and the 1st credit report. Is there any kind of mistake or discrepancy that took place? When you're asking data furnishers, aka creditors, to do a reasonable investigation, to look into the account, you'd be surprised at how much stuff they change that's not right. And Credit Versio is going to catch it. And then same thing with round 4, but usually people don't go more than 4 rounds. Okay, I hope that answers the question. Let's see. I use my address off my credit union papers. Yeah, David, that should be fine. The important thing with your credit union, does it have a physical address? Most credit unions do. I've seen them kick back Chime because Chime doesn't. If they have a physical address, like a bank address, I don't know. But as long as it's got to have, so your credit union, it has to have their name and address, your name and address, and it has to be within ideally 60 days old, maybe 90 days old at the most, and you should be just fine. Okay. I have a question from others in the room watching. When an account is removed, deleted, why would your credit score drop? Well, you can't make an assumption that that's the cause of it. Sometimes it can drop if you, like, for example, one of the things that I'll always caution somebody is you probably don't want to dispute, like, let's take a charge off that's maybe 6 years old, 5 years old. So it's getting ready to drop off. It's pretty old, but let's say it's the oldest account you have on your credit report. So part of both the FICO and the Vantage Score a pie chart that makes up how your score is factored is age of accounts. So for FICO, as an example, Vantage Score is pretty close to this too. That's about 15% of your score, about 82.5 points sit in the age of accounts. So you can inadvertently remove an old account and it can drop your scores. So that's one of the reasons why I'd be cautious about disputing something that's as old. Now, when it falls off at 7 years, you're going to lose that history anyway, but there's no reason to speed that up. Okay. Let's see. A lot of times you lose the time it's been on there and it hurts your score. It can. It depends. If you have, like, for example, I've got a lot of accounts on my credit report that are relatively old. If I lost 1 or 2, probably wouldn't be a big deal. But if I only had 2 accounts on my credit report that were relatively old and I deleted those because they were charge-offs, yeah, that could probably drop my credit score. Or if it's a foreclosure, or if it was, something that was pretty substantial, sure, yeah, I could lose points. Okay. All right, Stan, thanks for your expertise. You're very welcome. Getting closer to my goals. Last time I told you I was in the low 700s. I am 750s. Wow, great job. I love hearing that. It's always a very exciting thing for me to hear when people are really getting great success. Okay, so why don't we do this? Got a pretty good audience still. Feel free to keep the questions coming in. So I'm going to give you some points that I've learned about creating dispute letters, just a general philosophy. Now, this is in line with also Crediversio. Now, a lot of people who are watching this are just going to use the suggested reasons by Crediversio, or maybe pick one of the other reasons in the drop-down menu. If you're writing custom reasons, or listen, if you don't have Crediversio, perfectly fine. I'm still happy to answer questions for you. And you just want to know how to do a better dispute letter, what to do, what not to do. Here we go. I'll share it with you. And this is something that I've learned over the years. And by the way, I want to give you some context for this. Remember, if you've been on the live this whole time, one of the things that I said earlier is that there's a lot of myth in the credit repair space. And by the way, I was guilty of that too. There's a lot of stuff that I believed about how to do credit repair that was so factually inaccurate. I'm kind of embarrassed that I believe that stuff now. So what changed? The first thing that created that change was I met a guy by the name of Steve Rieger. He works for Smart Credit, which is one of the 3 bureau credit report providers for Crediversio. And he used to run the entire West Coast dispute resolution division for TransUnion. He was there for 26 years. He also served as an expert witness over 600 times. So he's been deposed in the legal process in federal and civil court 600 times to defend the actions that bureaus take in the dispute process. This is the guy. I mean, if you want to know how things work at a bureau level, this is the kind of person that you talk to. So when I met this guy for the first time, when I was with my old credit repair company and we were partnering with them, we were all having dinner together, and he just kind of laid out, this is how things work. And by the way, I was kind of all in credit repair, always sort of programmed to think that the bureaus were the enemy and they're out to get you and they're going to drop your score. And so I was sort of apprehensive talking to him because I thought that was the role and the position that these guys had. And that was so wrong. I was so dead wrong about it that was one of the more fascinating dinners and meetings I've ever had in my life. And the outcome was that the bureaus really do care about having accurate stuff. They're not here to hurt you or hurt me or make life difficult for you. They just want the information on the credit report to be right. And Steve is not the first guy that I made friends with who comes from the bureau or comes from a FICO or VantageScore. I've met a lot of these guys over the last decade, and these are up and up people. They really want to do right. And if something is wrong or on your credit report or not 100% right or not verifiable, they want it off too. Why do you think we do bureau disputes? Why do you think that Crediversio has you mail disputes to the bureaus? You could mail them to the creditor directly if you wanted, but you know why we have you send them to the bureaus? Because you're recruiting the bureaus to help you. Because if the data furnisher, if the creditor or collection company or whoever is not following the law, the bureau can delete the account for you or update the account for you. Ultimately, they're responsible for the information on the credit report. Usually when attorneys sue on behalf of clients for mistakes on credit reports, there's always at least 2 defendants. There's the bureau and there's the data furnisher. It's never just the data furnisher, because that information is being housed and presented somewhere, and that's by the bureaus. So believe it when I tell you that they really want this information to be right, and they really are there to help you, contrary to everything that is out there on the blogosphere and YouTube and TikTok and so forth. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's see. Crediversio's the go. Thank you. I appreciate that. Let's see. Let me get to a couple questions first, and then we're gonna move forward. Okay. Do we still need to pay collection debt if we're disputing? What's your take on resolving that currently on round 2? So Christopher, that's a great question. So my answer on this has really not changed a lot in 10 years. And here's an area where it's the only area where John Olsheimer and I don't 100% see eye to eye. And watching John Olsheimer, who's not here with me today, is formerly with FICO and formerly with Equifax. And my view is that you should always dispute first, because you don't know if they have a legal right to collect. A lot of collections are purchased on spreadsheets, by the way. It's called the secondary collection market, and collection companies, especially when they buy like the secondary market. So the ones that are buying a debt who was already owned by a collection company, sometimes they buy the stuff on spreadsheets and they don't have all the documentation that's required to comply with what's called the FDCPA. That's the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. And they have to comply with that. They have to prove that they've got a legal right to collect, that they now own the debt. A simple dispute, sometimes 50% of the time, 60% of the time, will delete that collection. So Christopher, my advice is dispute it first. Send out a few disputes. Go 3 or 4 rounds and make them work. Listen, the burden of proof, the burden of performance, it's on that collection company. They need to be able to tell the bureaus and you that, yes, we are in possession of this debt. It is legal for us to collect it. Now, if they can do that, if they send you documentation, here's how you know, Christopher, because I've been in this boat before. I've actually, fought collections before. If they send you a documentation that's got your account number, the original creditor, any kind of payment history, the debt that you owe, I mean, you can, let's be honest, we can look at that document, and if they have all of the I's dotted and the T's crossed, and they for sure, you can tell they own this debt. One time I was disputing Macy's, a Macy's charge off from back in the day. They sent me a manila envelope that thick of all of my stubs. I'm like, oh shoot, I'm not going to win this one. So Christopher, what's on the up and up. So if they don't respond and they dispute it, there you go. Okay, that's a win. You've at least with that collection company, they did not comply, and that's been deleted. You'll probably never hear from them ever again. Now, if they can, then yeah, I would. If it's within your financial ability and you can settle that debt, call them up, make an arrangement. Don't do a payment, payments. Just do a one-time flat fee. Start at 30 cents on the dollar. They might have paid 10 cents on the dollar. If they bought the debt, if they were assigned the debt, that's a whole other thing. But still, it's all negotiable. So, and don't be afraid of them. They're just people. They're not going to come take your children away from you or burn your house down. I mean, they want. If you get grumpy people on the phone at a collection agency, just take a second to think about what that person's got to go through every single day, calling up people trying to collect money. Have a little patience. Be easy to work with. Make an earnest settlement, and then pay them and move on. Okay, that's the best advice you're going to hear for collections. If somebody tells you don't pay your collections, that's bad news. Let's see. Let's scroll down here. Stan, that's true. Took 3 rounds before they deleted it because they didn't have proof. There you go. Yeah. Sometimes you'll see, we see a lot of deletions for collections coming off round 4, surprisingly. You'd think it happened earlier on, but sometimes it does take to round 4 to get that creditor or that collection company to respond. And one of the reasons why it can take so long, excuse me here, it's really dry in Vegas today. I was in Colorado last week. It's one of the reasons why I didn't do a live. And it was humid, it was hot. I felt hydrated, but man, Vegas right now is 108 outside. Dry, everything's dry. Okay. Let's see. You are very welcome, Christopher. Let's see. David, can you explain buying the debt versus the debt being assigned? Yeah, that's an easy one. So you have really 2 types of entities that are in the collection business. You have collection services that are assigned debt. So I'll give you an example. Let's say, what's a good example of assigned debt? Okay, a medical can be a good one. So let's say I'm a surgical center, and I'm a surgeon. I'm not in the business of chasing people around for payment. Let's just say I did, some kind of service for you, and there's $5,000 that's outstanding. This is elective, so it's not covered by insurance. My office is going to call you 3, 4, 5 times. We're going to hold on to it for a while, and then we got to move on because I'm all about my scalpel and making money, and I'm not about chasing people around for debt. So what I might do is I might assign that debt because there's all kinds of collection companies out there that are going to call a medical office or are going to call all kinds of businesses and say, listen, if you assign this to us, we'll collect the debt because that's what we're in the business of doing, and we'll make it, you pay us 40% of whatever Let's say you pay us 50% of whatever we collect. It's 50% you didn't have. You were about to write off this debt anyway. If we collect $5,000, we keep $2,500. We give you $2,500. That's debt assignment. So the collection company is going to get a percentage of the revenue they collect. Let's say they don't collect 5,000. Let's say they settle for 3,000. Okay, so I, the surgeon, I get 1,500. They keep 1,500. Okay, that's how assignment works. Now you have debt buyers. So let's say I'm a big hospital. Okay, I got a whole bunch of debt that's outstanding. I'm not calling anybody. I'm not chasing anybody. Let's say I've got $1 million worth of debt that I haven't been able to collect on. So I might sell that $1 million for, hey, if I get 100 grand for it, I get something. I'm not going to get the million, but I probably didn't expect it anyway. So I'm going to sell it to Midland Funding or LVNV or a number of collection companies that are out there. I'm going to say, hey, listen, guys, I got $1 million worth of debt right here. It's recent. It's less than a year old. Anybody want it for 100 grand? Oh, you want it for 100 grand? Okay, here you go. Now I got 100 grand. I'm done. I'm out. And then I'm moving on. Now that collection company owns that debt. Let's just assume that one collection company bought that $1 million worth of debt, and they start picking up the phone and they start emailing. They start, they'll put it on people's credit reports to get them motivated. And they bought that debt for 10 cents on the dollar. So let's say they call me up. I'm the guy that, I got $1,000 medical bill, and they want to get that $1,000, but they're into it for $100. So what happens if I'm like, yeah, man, listen, I got to get this off my plate. I'm worried about it. I don't like having this debt over my head. Will you take $500? Collection company's like, oh, yeah, okay, for you today, we'll do it. So they just made $400. So that's the difference between a debt assignment and a debt buyer. All right. Okay, it looks like I'm caught up on questions. Very good. Wow, we are 38 minutes into this. I normally stay about 45. All right, you guys, you want to go to the dispute letters? We want to talk about that? Let's bang that out real fast, okay? I'm not going to make this terribly complicated. All right. You know what, Orlando, just because it's you, I'll answer this one for you. Okay, if I call a debt collector and settle a debt, should I ask for a goodwill deletion letter? Actually, you would really refer to that as a pay for delete. A goodwill letter is something entirely different. Okay, I understood what you meant, though. Yes, I would. Now, they don't have to do it. In fact, they're not supposed to do it. The reason why they're not supposed to do it is the Trade Association for the Credit Bureaus and for Creditors, aka Data Furnishers, is called the CDIA, the Consumer Data Industry Association, and they have something called the the Credit Reporting Resource Guide. It's about that thick, it's 232 pages long, something like that. And in there, they expressly explain and admonish collection companies or any data furnisher for deleting a derogatory trade line in exchange for credit. They don't want collection companies to do it because they rightfully believe it skews the scoring process. So if you got 4 collections and they're the only 4 collections you've got on your credit report, and let's say you got all 4 of them deleted as a result of paying them, now the credit report is going to obviously look a lot better than it did, probably going to score a lot higher than you would. Now that's all good for you and for me, but in the spirit of what a credit report is for, which is to have a chronological, historical representation of what you and I do as far as the way we handle debt, it's not what they want to see. Because a lot of creditors might want to know that you had collections in the past because it could help them make a decision on whether or not they want to approve you, right? We want to get approved. Okay? We want to get approved at the best rate possible. So there's a little bit of a contradiction there. There's a conflict right there. And that is, we want what's best for us, and the industry wants what's best also for us, but also for lenders. So they're seeing correct information. So now, having said that, Orlando, I would absolutely ask them for a deletion letter, even though they're not supposed to do it. Collection companies a lot of times will. And the way I would phrase it is this. I would say, listen, I'm going to pay this debt. I'll take care of it in full. However, I need you to do this for me. I'm trying to get financed, or put a little reason in there for them. Like, listen, I'm trying to just make my credit report look a little bit better. If you can remove this from all three bureaus upon payment and give that to me in writing through email, it's going to be fine. Then I'll go ahead and pay this over the phone. But just send me that email right now. I'll wait on the phone for you while you send it over to me. But get something in writing first. Get them to email you something, so you have something to hang over their head if they decide not to do it. Now, even if they email you and they don't do it, there's not really much recourse you have. But most of the time, it's pretty much done in good faith. If they tell you they're going to do it, they typically do. Okay. Question someone asking. Stan, are you seeing questions I'm not seeing? Maybe so. If you negotiate and agree to pay, does that restart the statute of limitations? No, it doesn't start the statute of limitation. It can restart the time bar date. Okay, so we're talking about two things. Statute of limitations is the 7-year timeline from the first date of default. It's called the date of first delinquency. It's that 30-day late payment that went to then 60, 90, 120, 150, whatever it is, 180, and then it went into charge-off status somewhere around 120 and 150. That 30-day late, that is typically the date of first delinquency. The 7-year mark starts from there. Now, if you pay a debt, do a partial payment, nothing will restart that date. That's hard-coded into the Metro 2. What we're talking about is the time bar date. So what's the difference? Every state has a different timeline where they can sue you to reclaim the debt that you owe. Now, some states, it's 4 years. I know California is 4 years. A lot of states are 4 years. Some states don't have a time bar at all. They can sue you whenever they want. Now, let's just say I'm in California. I've got a debt that's 3 years and 9 months old, and the time bar is about to stop, meaning that creditor only has 3 months. What did I say? 3 years, 9 months. So let's just go with that. They have 3 months to file that lawsuit against me to sue me for that balance that I owe. Once we reach that 4-year mark, they can keep it on my credit report, but they just can't sue me for it. Okay, that's called a time bar. Now, if I were to make a payment and not pay it off in full, then yes, I can restart that date all the way back to 0, and now I gave them another 4 years. So that's a really, really good question. Okay. And by the way, let me just add a little bit more onto that. When you're settling with a collection company, as a general rule, don't give them a payment plan. Just knock it out. Okay, just pay it off all in one shot. Save up if you've got to, so you don't have something like that happen. Now, typically they're not going to sue you. Like if you've got a payment plan, they're not going to go, okay, gotcha. Now we're going to sue you. Normally, these things are done in good faith. Now, if they were like, hey, listen, give us a $50 payment, you paid it, and then you disappeared, yeah, now you kind of open yourself up to maybe a little bit of risk. Okay. Controversial family, please do your research on collection companies. There are scammers out there pretending as well. Yeah. Stan, when I first got into this business, just 10 years, a little over 10 years ago, it was a lot easier to get away with that kind of stuff, a lot more so than now. One of the big players in this is the CFPB. Everybody's scared of the CFPB. I mean, the CFPB essentially just shut down effectively Lexington Law. They filed bankruptcy not too long ago. They have a $3.1 proposed billion-dollar judgment against them. That's the CFPB. There's not as many people in the collection space, debt consolidation space, that are as free and wild. It's not the wild, wild west like it used to be, because everybody's concerned, as they should be, about doing what's right. And the penalties for not doing right are pretty stiff these days. In fact, one thing that's crazy, I've been having this conversation more and more lately, because I spend a lot of time talking to credit repair companies, big ones usually. And it's amazing to me to see how many of them want to get out of doing full service credit repair, because now they're worried about the telemarketing sales rule. That's what got Lexington law. They're concerned about CROA. That's the Credit Repair Organizations Act. That's charging. You can't charge upfront fees. And now regulatory agencies are coming in and they are grabbing big companies and making an example of them. And nobody wants to go down that path. The reason why I'm having so many conversations with these guys is they want to move everything over to DIY. They want to have a relationship with the client, like give them coaching, like I'm doing for you. They want to do this more on a one-on-one basis. But they want the client to do their own repair using our software, because that way it's really done in the way it was supposed to be done. The federal government, when they started writing these laws back in the 1970s, that's really what they had in mind. They were giving you and me the power to dispute these things and putting all of the burden of performance and proof and work on the data furnishers, on the creditors, on the bureaus, not on you and me. We don't know how a lot of this stuff works. They don't want us to be victim to bad actors in this arena. That's why there's tons and tons of laws that give us the rights that we have. So anyway, I know that was a little bit of a rant, but I just wanted to put you at ease. Yeah, there's scammers out there, but man, they don't last long, and they tend to get caught pretty fast. And this great thing with the internet now is you can do a Google search on anybody who calls you or emails you, and you're going to be able to find out pretty fast. So not as much of a concern. I'm not saying there isn't a concern. I don't think it's just as much as it used to be. All right, we are coming up on 50 minutes on the live. Do we have any more questions that I can answer? It looks like to me that we're going to have to get to the dispute letter next time. I think this is the first time I got so many questions I didn't even get into the subject matter that I plan on talking about today, and that's a good thing. I'm glad for all the questions. Orlando, Stan, you guys were awesome today. Christopher, great questions. David Fenton, that was a good question too. Yeah, I'm just scrolling through. Andre, great to see you again. James, great question from YouTube. Actually, James on YouTube there. Perfect. Yeah, you guys were great today. I really appreciate it. So I'm going to sign off here in a second unless another question pops on. And if you're watching this on a replay on Facebook, feel free to post your question. I usually swing back around. If I don't see it, Travis over in customer service is very capable of answering these questions for you. Same thing with on YouTube. Just put a post. I believe on this video I can see it. And if not, then if you've got a question, just email support@creditversio.com. More than happy to help you out. Okay, that looks like it. Thank you so much for joining me today. It's always a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. I'll be here at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday, and I'll probably have John Alzheimer with me. So we'll start talking a little bit more about what to do, what not to do to build your credit up and answer some of the most common questions that we get when it comes to scores and how bureaus and how credit works. All right, thank you so much for joining me.